Hello, I'm Nancy Durrant. I'm the Evening Standard Arts Editor, and this is Cultural Capital. This week, as the Proms kick off in person at the Royal Albert Hall, we're talking to the man behind it all about how on earth you bring back the world's biggest classical music festival after a global pandemic. We've snuck into the studio with the Turner Prize winning artist Oscar Murillo to find out about his new Art Angel project in a Hackney school. Thing of the week is kind of fishy, and I'll be reviewing a brilliant new documentary about how one role in one film changed a vulnerable young man's life forever, the most beautiful boy in the world. So tonight, after a year's hiatus, the Finnish conductor Dalia Stasevska will take to the podium to lead the BBC Symphony Orchestra in the first night of the Proms. First broadcast in 1927, but dating back as far as 1895, the Proms have been part of the cultural fabric of London for generations. Every summer, they bring all kinds of music, from big band to Beethoven, to audiences from all walks of life, with tickets starting at just a few quid. A few days ago, we popped down the road to their home venue, the Royal Albert Hall, to see the last stage of preparations for one of the most anticipated music festivals in the world.
I've just arrived back in the Albert Hall for the first time in a year, and it just feels astonishing to think that we're about to embark on 6 weeks of concerts in front of live audiences, and that the Proms is getting back to normal again. And for me personally, that's exciting, and I think for our audiences and for our performers as well, it's just a thrilling moment. For somebody who's never been to the Proms before, and every concert has its own atmosphere in this incredible building, but I would suggest that if you've never been to a classical concert before, you might want to come to something like the Dvorak New World Symphony that's coming on fairly early on in the season, which is a big, brilliant piece of popular classical music, and you'll probably know some of the tunes. And if you don't want to come and hear a classical concert, come and hear the amazing saxophonist Nubia Garcia, who's here at the Proms for the first time. And I'm really pleased that we're particularly celebrating British artists because, of course, they've had a very tough time during the pandemic. So we've got, a new young group called the Manchester Collective who are coming to the Proms, and also we've got sort of familiar favourites like Joshua Bell. The real challenge for us this year was the fact that we were planning this programme in January, February and March when we were in complete lockdown. So we've had to be quite cautious in some areas about making sure we could deliver everything we said we could. But at the same time, we wanted to leave that little bit of ambition in the programme. And so we built a bigger stage than last year so we can do repertoire on a slightly grander scale. And the main thing we've tried to do is preserve the spirit and essence of the Proms. You can expect a really extraordinary atmosphere here because the Proms has a fame which goes all around the world, and I think the musicians who perform on the stage absolutely love being a part of it, and that communicates itself to the audience. And there's a sort of informality to the place, but there's also a really sort of serious listening that our audiences pay attention to in the Proms. So it's a wonderful combination of artists and audience in a sort of communal spirit together. I think one of the most important things about the Proms is it's incredibly accessible from a price point of view. So we have promming from £6, we have seats from £7.50. This is a tiny amount of money to pay to go and hear a world-class orchestra in an amazing building. We've all been going through such a challenging time with the pandemic, and music has been one of the things that's really helped us all through, whatever your musical tastes. And so this chance now, as we move out of the pandemic, to come and hear live music making, to have your emotions stirred by music with other people in an auditorium like this, I think will be really special and really important part of just getting life back to normal and the curtain raiser for what we hope is going to be a greater sense of normality later in the year.
The Proms run at the Royal Albert Hall and Cadogan Hall from tonight until September the 10th. Now, this may be showing my age, but in my early school days at least, every desk, those wooden ones with a lid, were covered in scrawls of my scholarly ancestors. Kid names, band names, hearts, stars, threats, love notes, the inevitable cock and balls. The artist Oscar Murillo recognised the value of this sort of textural archaeology, and since 2013 he's sent pieces of blank canvas to schools around the globe with the instruction that they be fixed to classroom desks for a term, inviting students aged 10 to 16 to mark them however they like. Now the nearly 40,000 canvases that make up the project are going on display together for the first time in the sports hall at Cardinal Pole Secondary School in Hackney, which Murillo attended after arriving with his family from Colombia. We headed down there to meet him.
We started frequencies in 2013, and I think we can estimate that to date we have over 40,000 canvases. We have visited 34 individual countries and engaged with hundreds of thousands of kids. I think the idea that you have 40,000 canvases, I mean, it's effectively like having a reference library or entering a reference library. And to me, the idea of the equator and frequencies is just allows for a greater landscape to be researched, to be understood, for a diverse number of places to be taken into account, and so on and so forth. The canvas as a skin or as a recording device that sits idle is picking up activity, picking up movement, conscious information or unconscious information. It's then evidence of that individual. It's evidence of a certain area. It's evidence of a certain social strata, economic reality, and hence you start seeing all these different frequencies.
I definitely think the journey, like to get here, is special because you have to go through all of the stuff, like putting the canvases out, hoping that people write on the canvases, doing just the whole process of it is like amazing.
Yeah, I mean, school children are, fighting or are wrestling with doctrine, and they don't vote. So they are a little bit like ghosts, in a society. I think that they are they themselves are recording devices. And the canvases are just there to pick up all that information. Like Kenya, for example, with characteristics of these canvases, having this yellowish patina, suggestive, one could say, of an earthliness that perhaps the environment or nature kind of infiltrates into these canvases. Or you look at canvases from Argentina, for example, or Chile. There is this more kind of anarchic, energy, for example. It could really be an endless investigation of humanity and time. We say that a child is a reflection of its society, is a bit of a sponge, and we have all this information. The goal really has been to ultimately, regardless of the number, the project becomes symbolic. In the face of humanity, in the face of society, in the face of growth, in the face of change, it becomes a symbolic gesture. So, 40,000 is really a symbolic number.
Frequencies is at Cardinal Pole Secondary School until the 30th of August. Can you smell that? It's Thing of the Week.
I'm standing here with two of our sawfish rostras, which are in the Grant Museum collection. These are the noses with teeth along the side. They are an order of fish, which include rays and skates, and they're closely related to sharks. They were highly prized as objects of curiosity by 19th century collectors, and you often see them in old pubs and things displayed around. We have about 9 of them in the collection, and they have been in the collection for at least 150 years. In living, this animal would spear fish along its teeth on the side, and also move the rostra or the nose through the sand to kick up the sand and kick up the fish.
You can visit the Grant Museum of Zoology from Tuesday to Saturday. Now, anyone who has seen Luchino Visconti's 1971 film Death in Venice will remember the luminous youth who plays Taggio, the beautiful boy with whom the protagonist becomes dangerously obsessed.
Taggio! Taggio!
Quel âge a-t-il?
Il a 15.
Il est très beau. Dis-lui d'enlever son pullover.
This really quite disturbing documentary focuses on that boy, dubbed by Visconti and then the world's press as the most beautiful boy in the world. And it tells how the fallout from his time in Venice and an earlier tragedy that had already left its mark has affected him ever since. Blonde-haired, tall and slender, aged 15 but still very much a child, Björn Andersson basically didn't stand a chance. We see him at his screen test for the role, squirming under the frankly predatory gaze of Visconti, mortified as he's asked to take off his clothes with no chaperone and no privacy. We hear from the film's casting director, Margareta Krantz, who, over footage of the boy frolicking on the beach, tells us that when he appeared, Visconti's whole body came to life. He seemed fragile, she tells us, and then, you have to be careful when dealing with children like that, which of course, they are not. Andersson is now in his 60s, still an actor and musician. Horror fans will recognise him from the recent hit Midsummer. Still tall, but now Gandalf bearded with long white hair that gives him the air of a silver birch in a gale. He still seems fragile, and the reasons for that are revealed over the course of the film. The sudden loss of his single mother at the age of 5, a further shattering loss in his early 30s, a fame-hungry grandmother pushing him into acting, and a lupine entertainment industry hungrily exploiting his youth and naivety, and a natural tendency to spells of depression. All this and more creates turmoil within a man whose evident inherent goodness is always fighting with feelings of guilt and worthlessness that you'd think would fell the strongest of spirits. But there is hope here too, amid the terrible tragedy. You are not an uncomplicated man, his brilliantly forthright girlfriend tells him towards the end of the film. When she addresses him as the love of my life, he asks her, do I deserve to be? And her answer is simple, you do. This is a fascinating but cautionary tale of just how far into a life trauma's tentacles can stretch, and a lesson in how toxic fame can be. The Most Beautiful Boy in the World is in cinemas from today. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching Cultural Capital. We'll see you next Friday.